to URBONUS podcast. Donatas Urbonas, Rytis Vyšniauskas. As always, after a short break, it's been a while since our last episode, but we are here again to talk about the main things in the EuroLeague and EuroLeague action.
Yep, it's been a couple of weeks since our last podcast, but there is a really strong reason why we had this short break, and I have to say congratulations to you and your family. Donatas.
Thank you.
Became a father. So how does it feel?
As crazy as it sounds.
Are you getting any sleep?
I'm in Kobe regime right now. I remember there was a story that Kobe was sleeping 4 or 5 hours per day. So for me now it's the best case scenario to sleep at least 4 and 5 hours. Usually it's something around 3 hours. But surprisingly, I'm okay with that. Before it was like if I don't get it at least 6 or 7 hours to sleep, I'm dead the next day. But now I'm kind of adjusted. I have no idea where that energy comes from. Maybe it's that adrenaline still, which helps me. But yeah, I'm surviving.
But you already put Luka Doncic's jersey on a baby, right?
No pressure, no pressure for my kid. But yeah, I have some expectations for that young fella. Yeah. I also have some advanced stats from my early experience.
Okay.
I witnessed the highest poop per 1 meter ratio I ever seen. It was the second or third day in the hospital, and there was a short distance, probably 3 meters, between the table where you can change the diapers and the sink. So Matas managed to poop 3 times from that table to the sink, and it first it happened changing the diaper. Then my wife took him, and on his way he had a poop on the floor. It looked like a cake, all these early young dogs poops, they look like a nice cake.
Oh, I do know that.
Yeah, and the last one was over the sink. We were like washing his small butt, and he was pooping all over again. So
welcome to our poopcast.
Yeah, welcome to our poopcast.
But in general, is it fair to say that talking about the advanced stats, the plus-minus ratio is positive?
So far it's negative, but I know that it's a long season. It's the season of, it's a journey of a lot of ups and downs, a journey of runs.
Yeah.
And the beginning was hard. I lost 5 kilos in 5 days. And so far we're only negative at night because Matas is not giving us any sleep. But I hope that in the end of the season, we will get in that plus zone.
Well, as the great Šarūnas Jasikevičius says, we have to be ready to suffer. So you have to be ready to suffer, make some sacrifices. But overall, I think it's a big thing. I mean, a huge change in your life, and I'm really happy for you and your family. So
yeah, and
congratulations.
It's really more important than LKL semifinal game against Neptūnas. That's for sure. That's for sure.
So you're a journalist, right? So if on the day, on that day, the birth of your child, and there would have been a semifinal game, you would not be in the press conference, obviously.
It depends.
You would skip that.
What kind of semifinal? LKL or the EuroLeague?
Well,
even in the EuroLeague, I would skip that semifinal. Yeah, sorry, EuroLeague, but it's not worth it.
There's no question. But now you can be legit. If Saras would approach you and say, "Do you have children?" You could say, "Yeah, man." Yeah. What's your problem? Okay, nice. It's really nice to have you back. Actually, I think this podcast for you should be something like vacation.
Oh yeah, it's a great reason to refresh my mind.
Yeah.
Because now every day is the same. No weekends. You approach the weekend the same mentality. It's like game by game. I don't look forward 2 weeks later. I just look at it as a day by day stuff, changing diapers.
Again, like a basketball coach.
Yes.
Day by day, training after training, game after game. The big question is, did you manage to watch any basketball during these few weeks?
It was different. I managed to watch some of the games, but for sure it was different. I had an experience where my baby was crying at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just put on Olympiacos and UNICS game, but I watched only the first quarter of that game, which was really great. I saw the end of the game, but it was during the time Matas was sleeping. So of course my schedule changed a bit. I watched way less games than usual, but with some time I will, get in my rhythm. But of course I watched almost 2 times. I watched the game of the season, Anadolu Efes Barcelona, and it was crazy game in terms of the level, in terms of conditions, in terms of hype, emotions. And before talking about Efes and Barca, I want to ask you something. We heard what Jakub Sekiskok, the assistant coach of Efes, who stepped up to replace Ataman when he was ejected again, what he told about refs. We read the Anadolu Efes statement, press release about the referee's job. We saw what was going on Twitter, but we didn't hear Ergin Ataman speaking about that situation. So, Rytis, what would be Ergin's thoughts after the game about the referees and their impact on the outcome of the game?
It's a shame. It's big shame. EuroLeague, put these referees. Foul out my best player. There was no foul. Shane, why you give him 5 foul? Why you give him 5th foul? There was no foul. It's big shame. These referees, I don't know whether they want to decide the game or not. They made these decisions. They went against Anadolu Efes. We will not tolerate this. We will go back next week, crush our opponents, and we will win the EuroLeague in the Final Four this season because of this. Referees are a disgrace.
2 technicals.
Yes,
in one play.
In a row.
That was unfair, actually.
But the thing is, actually, these 2 technicals were
after a good call.
After a foul, which was an obvious one, applies on Brandon Davis.
Yeah.
But of course, the emotions were there not because of this one whistle. Mm-hmm. It was a sequence of things that happened in between. But really, I don't think it's fair to say that the referees punished Anadolu Efes. Barcelona suffered as well. Nikola Mirotic was fouled out. The end of the 4th quarter, they gave a foul.
The 5th foul was good call.
The 5th foul, yes, but
because the 4th one was terrible call. It was the out of bound play actually by Larkin, if you remember well.
Yeah,
he hit the ball. Mirotic hit the ball, and it went out of bounds from Larkin's leg. I think
it was the end of the 4th quarter. Barca was up by 2.
Yeah. It was a crucial call, actually.
And there was nothing.
Yeah.
Mirotic made a clean play on defense. And
he got a foul.
And the ball went out of bounds off Shane Larkin. Which brings me to this thing about coach's challenge. In the NBA, if you have your challenge, you could use that. And the referees could see on the replays that there was no foul on Mirotic.
Oh, so they can eliminate the foul call?
In the NBA, you can challenge
everything.
Okay. If it's a questionable foul call, you challenge. If you have timeouts left, because obviously if the challenge is not successful, you lose one of your timeouts. So it's the end of the game, the very last seconds of the game. Not necessarily you still have your challenge, but if you do, in the NBA, you could challenge that. And you could ask the referees to watch replays. And after the replays, I think it's clear and obvious. There was no foul on Mirotic. So that's one thing. Another thing, how did Mirotic get into foul trouble? There were really questionable calls in the first half of the game when he got his 1st, 2nd, and 3rd foul. So, yes, I agree that his 5th foul was clear, but the ones before, I don't know.
I don't remember about early calls for Mirotic, but for example, to compare with Shane Larkin, he got like 3 cheap calls. 3rd, 4th, and 5th fouls were just terrible calls, especially the last one. As he said, it was a bullshit, and he didn't even touch. It was Kyle Kuric,
Kyle Kuric,
if I'm right. And at least 3 calls were really terrible.
I mean, but my point is that.
But yeah,
it was bad refereeing, but it was for both teams.
Ways. It went both ways.
It was not like the refs were killing Anadolu Efes. And what Ataman did, I don't know. I think he just...
It was his mistake.
He couldn't handle his emotions in the heat of the moment. Saras also got a technical, but it was way earlier in the game. It was
it was also a good reaction because it was terrible call. It was, I think, Bobois was fouled. But the thing is that he hit his leg by himself. So that was why Saras was appealing. But even if Ataman was wrong with being, let's say, on fire that much, it wasn't, he didn't deserve getting 2 technicals in a row.
I don't know what was said. I just saw how he was acting, and he was acting like crazy, really. He got the first technical, then he just couldn't calm down. Adrian Morman was there trying to actually
but I think
distract
it was
him.
after the second call. The problem, what pisses me off, is that when he got the second technical, he didn't get even didn't get any warning that, okay, Ergin, thanks for your emotions, thanks for your words, but if you will continue doing the same thing, I mean, you're out of the game. And it was like a very silent call. I think that Ataman didn't even notice that he got a second technical.
Yeah.
I saw that La Monica was also a bit surprised because that was a French referee, Mehdi Difala. Actually, the lineup of referees was amazing. La Monica, Milosevic, Difala, they are great referees.
Well, you could ask some American players, do they think is La Monica that great?
He's good, he's solid.
But, I mean, there are some players...
But even great ones make some mistakes, and the main thing about these refs, the main issue was that they were, let's say, they became stars of that game. And that's the worst part of a referee's job. You cannot be bigger than the actual game. And to make stars like Larkin and Mirotic foul out in this way, that's already a bad refereeing.
Ejection of Ergin Ataman is kind of a common thing.
Yeah.
It's not the first time it happened, so maybe for the referees, they also knew that Ataman has been ejected from games before. It was easier for them to make this decision. For example, it's hard to imagine Pablo Lasso getting ejected after one technical, getting another. But you actually mentioned this, and I think it's a really interesting topic. Larkin and Mirotic were fouled out of the game. Arguably 2 of the best players on the court. Well, you could say Mitic is the MVP, but Shane Larkin, we know that
2 of 5 best players in the EuroLeague,
when he gets
probably.
hot, he's unstoppable. So these are the stars. These are the main players of your league. And I always like referring to the American game, to the NBA, and how the Americans see the game. They couldn't imagine a game where LeBron James and Kevin Durant get fouled out because of silly, questionable calls. It's impossible. It doesn't happen. It's not normal. It shouldn't happen in EuroLeague. I mean, I'm 100% for a fair game. It doesn't matter if you're a superstar or you're a role player. If you make mistakes, you make mistakes. If you foul somebody, it should be called. But we're talking about questionable calls. We're talking about not even 50-50 situations. We're talking about Mirotic's 4th foul, which was nothing, and Shane Larkin's 5th foul, which was also nothing. It seemed to me like Shane Larkin's 5th foul was sort of a compensation for Barca because we called Mirotic's 5th. Sorry for that. Now we're gonna eliminate Anadolu Efes best player, which is really bad. And it's, I mean, we had an amazing game of basketball, but we are sitting here talking for 5 minutes already.
Talking about practice, man.
Only about referees and some strange decisions and the reactions after the game, how Anadolu Efes reacted, how Ergin Ataman was ejected, all that stuff. Just one thing, and let's make it clear, I mean, and move on to the basketball. It was not like referees were calling for Barcelona.
Yeah, no way.
Both teams had to deal with these things.
But the statement which was released by Efes was not focused on that, oh, we lost because of refs. I think that the main idea was that these calls were just, they just ruined the game. The quality of the game was, deserved better referees, and referees didn't meet the expectations of that kind of game. Watching 2 finalists of the EuroLeague last year fighting it, that kind of atmosphere, that kind of game. So probably that.
I think it's a fair statement. Yeah, I think it's a fair statement. I'm not sure if the club should respond in this way. It's normal when the fans talk about this, or the journalists. I don't know if the club should get into a battle with the refs and the EuroLeague, but well, it's their position, and I really agree that it kind of ruined the game. However, at the point of Ataman's 2 technicals, Barcelona were leading. These 2 technicals gave away 2 free throws for Kyle Kuric, which is basically 2 points because he's a 97% free throw shooter. And Barcelona had control of the game at this moment. And to me, it was really impressive that Anadolu Efes didn't break down at this particular point of the game. It was like 2:45 left in the overtime. And they responded. They were down by 7. They responded. After Krunoslav Simon's three-pointer, it seemed like they're going to rescue this game. They're going to win it. And they actually had some chances. They had a shot by Tibor Plais, I believe, a mid-range jumper. Micic had a long-distance shot, and they could have won the game even under these circumstances, which is kind of impressive.
And the same was in the fourth quarter. Barca was up by 5 with 1 minute to play, and Nigel Hayes missed both free throws. We already discussed wrong call on Nikola Mirotic. But Barca once again almost slipped the game away with the late decisions. And I love Jokubaitis, he's my man, but even he felt bad about his game. If you noticed, after the final whistle, then Barca won after the overtime, he grabbed his head actually because he made such silly passes. Some of them were deflected, some of them not. But even the last possession after the last timeout, the pass, it was, I don't remember if it was it was for Sanli, probably Sartash Sanli. And it was very, very tricky pass, and there were at least 3-4 deflections. He also fouled Vasilij Mitic when he was shooting a 3-pointer. It was a terrible ending for Jokubaitis.
Come on, you got to
even
mention
though
the
he
end
had
one.
that end one, yeah. So at least that thing helped him to survive that game.
But it definitely wasn't a terrible night for Sertac Sanli. Coming back home, we know that sometimes players, when they get back home, playing against their former teammates, before the game, they're greeted with applause. The fans are cheering for him because he contributed a lot to their championship title. And we know that in these circumstances, some players get too emotional and maybe they don't play so good. Sertac Sanli had a career night. He hit 4 3-pointers. His pick and pops were killing
some off-balance
Anadolu Efes.
3-pointers.
He made a really difficult shot in a clutch moment, I would say, in the fourth quarter. Ended up with 24 points. He really, in this game, showed to all of us why Saras signed him. He wanted to have a different type of center that could spread the floor. You could play pick and pops with him all the time. And many teams in the EuroLeague, they have these bigs that are not very mobile and you can attack them. And pick and pop is the best option to attack them. And Sertac Sanli, he's doing all these things. And in this game, he was a game changer with his 3-pointers, with his 24 points, with his energy. Actually, he played only 20 minutes, which you could say is not that much, knowing that there was an overtime.
He got in a foul trouble.
He got in a foul trouble.
He had 3 fouls in 14 minutes.
He's not the best option, obviously, in a switch-all defense. So in some cases, even if he's hot on offense, you still have to get back to Brandon Davis because of his defensive abilities. And this is one thing. But for me, the main thing of this game, the most important, is Saras. What he did in the halftime, the decisions he made in the second half of the game, because after the first 2 quarters, it looked like it was Efes' game. They were doing what they do best.
It reminded me the EuroLeague final of the last season, actually, especially the second half of the game.
Wouldn't you say it's like vice versa?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Anadolu broke the game.
Yeah,
Efes broke the game in the final. What I mean is, Barca just couldn't play any defense in the first half. One thing was that there were many foul calls, soft calls, and Anadolu Efes were getting to the line. I think they got like 18 free throws in the first half, but they just couldn't contain Micic and Larkin. They were driving to the paint. They were kicking the ball outside. They were making shots. It was Efes' game. What Saras did, He doesn't have Higgins. He doesn't have Abrines. He doesn't have Kalaitis. These are big players they're missing. So in the second half, he started playing with these huge lineups. I mean, the size of these lineups was enormous. At one point, there was Nigel Hayes at 2, Nikola Mirotic at 3, Piero Riola at 4, and Davis or Sanli at 5. And Jokubaitis, the point guard, or Laprovitola, he was actually controlling the team very well in this game in some moments. So these big lineups just pushed Anadolu Efes out of their comfort zone. The ball movement was stopped. Anadolu Efes couldn't score for the first 3 or 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. They ended up with only 12 points in the fourth quarter, 33 in the second half. And actually the points they scored in the fourth, these were just individual brilliance. This was just individual brilliance of Vasa Micic.
He scored 8 in the fourth quarter.
So Barcelona's defense was the key in the second half. And it was because the coach went for something we haven't seen this season or in the previous season with Mirotic at small forward position, because when he plays at 4, teams always attack him. Whether it's Morman or it's Shengelia or somebody else, they always try to attack Mirotic, be physical with him, get him in a foul trouble if possible. When he plays at 3, you could say that there are not too many ways how you could attack Mirotic. I mean, if he's guarding Krunoslav Simon, okay, he can handle Krunoslav Simon at the age of 36. If it's James Anderson at this point of his career is not an offensive player. So Mirotic feels quite okay defending in the third position. And obviously they're switching everything, and you have all these bigs, and you have Nigel Hayes playing as a shooting guard in the second position. So it was really amazing to see how the coach actually broke the game. So kudos to Jasikevičius. I think it was the biggest moment when he went to these lineups.
Yeah, he did it in passage style. If you remember, he was using Roland Smits as a free, as his small forward. He also was a big fan of big lineups. And you touched some great points. Sertac Sanli scored. He was a game changer in the fourth quarter on the offensive end. He scored 13 points in the fourth quarter with some crucial and tough shots when all Efes team had only 12 points. What I also liked that Barca controlled the tempo of the game. They had problems when Efes were sharing the ball, when they were playing, let's say, up-tempo basketball. But in the fourth quarter, Efes had only 11 shots. They made only 3 from 11. They made 4 turnovers. And what also helped that Barca had 5 offensive rebounds. So 5 extra possessions. We know that Saras loves long possessions. So that's how they dropped the tempo of the game. They contained Larkin only to 1 shot in the fourth quarter. And as you mentioned, it was only Vasilij Micic who was trying to do everything by himself. Although Efes had some nice opportunities, had some nice looks, but Moerman or Tibor Plais, sometimes Micic, they just missed all these shots. But what I also loved the most that in the fourth quarter on the offensive end, there were only 3 players who scored in Barca, and it was Sertac Sanli, Sergio Martinez, and Laprovitola. I mean, you can ask every coach in the EuroLeague, and if you give this lineup to finish the fourth quarter against the EuroLeague champs, they would start laughing at you. I mean, it's a crazy lineup.
Every time Sergio Martinez makes a spot-up shot, it seems like a miracle. I mean, all the teams, when Sergio Martinez is on the floor, they're willing to give him spot-up shots. But he made one actually important three-pointer in this game. I don't remember whether it was the fourth quarter or the overtime. It was in the fourth quarter.
I think it was his only shot.
His reaction after this was like,
I like Sergio Martinez.
He was relieved.
He's
a hard worker. He's a hard worker.
And Saras loves players like him.
You need these type of players even on the elite teams. That's why CSKA have Kurbanov. That's why Barcelona have Sergio Martinez. You need these type of players. But if he could improve his spot-up shot, it would make him a better player, a much better player than he is right now.
And I think he has potential to improve.
I hope so.
That thing. And Saras gives him enough opportunities.
Yeah, so we mentioned rebounds. It's actually quite obvious that
Kyle Kuric is crazy. He's offensive threat. He's always crashing the boards.
Yeah.
He got like 2
He's
or 3
diving,
offensive rebounds.
diving for
Crazy.
the balls. He's actually, his jumping abilities are kind of
Underrated.
underrated because he's a shooter. You see him like a JC Carroll type of
Yeah.
player, but he's athletic. He can jump.
Yeah.
I saw some dunks on fast breaks. He's pretty good, even though he's a veteran actually.
Yeah.
He's like 32 years old. But the numbers are in Barcelona's favor. I would say it's like the biggest problem when you're analyzing the box score for Anadolu Efes. 16 offensive rebounds in total for Barca, only 2 for Efes. It's 47 against 29 in total.
Yeah, Kuric, 3 offensive rebounds. More than whole Efes team.
And of course, it's a result of Barcelona playing these big lineups. Efes just couldn't get a rebound in the fourth quarter, in the overtime as well, and they were suffering. You're always suffering when you don't grab the rebounds under your basket. And I mentioned Higgins, I mentioned Kalaitis, I mentioned Abrinas. Actually, the player that was missing and the player that could have won the game for Anadolu Efes could have been a solution for Ataman at 4th position and even at 5th in some moments is Chris Singleton.
Mm-hmm.
A player who hasn't missed a EuroLeague game in like 3 years. He had
216 games, something like that.
I don't know. It's crazy. He had no injuries. He's like an Iron Man.
Uh-huh.
And now in this game, he's out. So Ataman had problems at the power forward position. We knew it's going to be a matchup Mormon versus Mirotic. But he actually had no second option. He went with James Anderson for a short period of time. He played with 2 centers for a really short period of time. I think it was like Petrushev and Dunstan on the court at the same time. And you could see that Barca are missing some key players, but actually Ataman is missing Chris Singleton, who is so important for this team. You don't see him putting big numbers. His stat line is not as impressive, but he is a difference maker in so many ways. And they really needed him in this game, and he was out. So, which is why Mormon played almost 40 minutes. I'm not saying he played bad, but it's a lot of minutes to play at this level. So, and Ataman was rotating his centers like every 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He started with Blythe, then after 3 minutes it's Dunstan, after 3 minutes it's Petrushev. He was trying everything, and you have to say that Sanli was the best big man in this game. So
now, with what Barca did in Istanbul with this roster, without all these players you mentioned, I mean, Kalaitis, Higgins, Abrinas, they're very important perimeter players. They could start for almost every EuroLeague team. I'm not even talking about Higgins and Kalaitis. They are stars of the EuroLeague. Saras even had to play Michael Caicedo. So I don't know nothing about that guy, but he was always attacked when he was on the court. I mean, and he still managed to survive this game,
wasn't
which
it
is crazy.
Jonas Miklovas? He was in Istanbul and he asked Saras about playing Mirotic at small forward, and Saras answered, well, I had 2 options. It was Mirotic or Caicedo, so what do you think? Yeah, so it was actually a pure masterclass from Jasikevičius. This is a real masterclass of a coach, how you can change the game, how you can influence the game. And also I would like to mention Nicolas Laprovitola, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I had some doubts when Barcelona signed him. We saw him playing in Madrid for Lasso. He was a streaky player, inconsistent, and I was thinking, why does Saras need a player like this? Now when they have injuries, Laprovitola plays really solid.
He stepped up.
He's playing with confidence. In this game, he had 14 points and 8 assists. He was controlling the team. As you mentioned, Jokubaitis was actually struggling. So credit to Laprovitola, really. He's an experienced player. We see him like this, I don't know, passionate Argentinian who is sometimes too relaxed. But he has balls. He's a great player. So
he has his own swag. Yeah, 25 points against ASVEL a week or 2 ago. Against Žalgiris 5 and 8 assists. Now 14 and 8 assists. Incredible stat line for so far when Kalaitis was out. And yeah, talking about Jokubaitis, as I mentioned, Saras is famous for keeping some of his players in Istanbul. Thomas Artel before. Arturas Milaknis was very close of being, of
So,
being
so
kept.
you were worried?
I was worried. I was already watching Booking.com and checking some available hotels for Rokos Jokubaitis, but they managed to pull that one. So I'm happy he came back home.
Efes should be angry actually after this game, and I think it's not good for Bayern. They are their next opponent in the 14th match week, and I think Anadolu Efes will go to Germany being really angry after this game. A lot of emotions, and we know that usually in Germany, I'm not sure what is the situation with COVID. How many people are allowed into
No
arena?
fans allowed
No
right now
fans at
until
all.
the
No fans.
15th of December, I think.
So that's a shame, because usually when the Turkish teams play in Germany, they feel like at home, especially Fenerbahce.
But probably it's only Fenerbahce, no? Or Efes
mostly
also gets...
mostly Fenerbahce, but Efes gets some support as well. Now they're EuroLeague champions; they're quite popular. Oh, okay, but if it's an empty gym, then that doesn't mean anything.
But at least Efes now is on... At least they were on a winning path. They won some important, and they had some solid wins against Olympiacos, 19 points. Monaco, very solid win. Fenerbahce, tough game, but they managed to come out with win. They also almost won against Barcelona. I mean, they are better than they were before in the beginning of the season.
Sure.
But the most important thing about Efes is for Ataman not to get wild, not to get crazy about his team, about the effort of his players, because I heard that at some point of the season, in the beginning of the season, when the team was losing, he started acting like previous Ataman a few years ago, being too strict for his players, too disciplined, and probably even breaking some rules of the EuroLeague Players Association with some early practices, with some, let's say, no day offs and stuff. So I hope that he won't continue doing that, because it won't help this team at all, as he also witnessed that with his previous experiences. So, Ergin, talk with your son, Sarf. He's very good
advisor.
He's a very good advisor. He has nice advices, nice tips from the psychological standpoint. So just relax, and your team will take care of it.
But as you mentioned, they're actually playing quality basketball at the moment. They had 4 wins in a row. This game against Barcelona, it's not like they played bad.
No.
It was a quality game of basketball. It just one team had to lose. And looking at the standings, they're 6-7 right now. And my prediction would be that by the end of this year, they will be in top 6. Because until December 30th is the last day when the games are played this year. So there are still 5 games left, and they should win 4 out of these 5, I believe, and they should be in the top 6 by the end of the year. And then it's the second part of the season, and you can change a lot of things. So,
yeah, what is interesting that the last year they were 7-6 after 13 rounds.
So it's kind of similar, but
yeah,
I think their problems last year were different than they are this
season.
season.
Yeah, I agree.
They're facing different challenges this time of the year, but they will be fine.
Okay, so let's jump to the next part of our podcast. We kind of, since we were off for 2 weeks, we wanted to discuss about some general things, not to discuss like weekly stuff. And we will try to give some advices and tips how to improve some teams. It can be signings. It can be, team meetings, trips to the strip bar just to relax, just to cool down. It can be, coaching change or something. But we will try to pick some teams which are struggling and to advise what they could do to improve their situation in some hypothetical scenarios.
Yeah.
So who you would start with?
I don't know, maybe we should start with a team that is actually good, that is actually Final Four material. It's just that now they're facing a bad path, I would say.
It's Milan?
And yeah, they lost 4 games in a row. It's Milano. The last game they lost against Alba Berlin. You can remember that they started winning 5 games in a row at the beginning of the season, and they were beating elite teams like CSKA, like Maccabi, like Anadolu, Efes, and now they're losing to Alba Berlin. So why?
Although Alba are surprising us.
Yeah,
They beat
they're
Maccabi by
good.
5 also.
They're good.
Yeah.
It's no disrespect to Alba.
Yeah.
It's just that the expectations for Ettore Messina's team is Final Four. So they should win games like this. So maybe we should talk about them and why are they losing at the moment and what could be changed? What can they improve?
Of course, injuries were a game changer, and especially I miss Dinos Mitoglou. I think that his injury was crucial because I think he gives a lot of physicality, effort, hustle, and good plays in key moments of the games. And it was what he did in the beginning of the season in close games, and now they lost some close games. And last 3 games they had they were 18th by defensive rating. They were last in rebounds both offensively and defensively, 17th in 3-point percentage allowed, last in fouls committed, and they're struggling a lot. And when it takes Dinos Mitoglou, he actually gave everything what Milan is missing right now. For example, with Dinos on the court, the offensive rebound percentage increases by more than 10%, defensive rebound percentage increases by 5%, 2-point shooting increases by 6%. He shared the third best defensive rating, third best offensive rating, and generally he was a glue guy for that team. And that's why I'm not the biggest fan of Ben Bentil signing. I think he's
a short-term solution.
Of course, and he's a good shooter for the 4th position, but I'm just missing the physicality which Mitoglou was bringing on the table. And of course, but it cannot be the single problem of Milan right now, but at least that's what I miss the most watching Milan team at this moment.
I was mostly disappointed the way they were blown out by Olympiacos at home. Before there was a blowout in Kazan and against Olympiacos, really, they were just crushed by the Greeks. And after Mitoglou's injury, I was thinking that, well, Nicolo Melli, he's going to have to play like for 30 minutes every game. And he should be the key player right now. And he has been playing good this season so far. But in these games, after Mitoglou's injury, Nicolo Melli was sort of blank, which is not okay because he's a very important part of the team. And when we're saying tips and advices or solutions for the current problems, I would say that I need to go back to what I was saying when they were winning. When they were winning, I was saying that in the previous season they were also winning, but it's a veteran team, and at some point they faced difficulties. Maybe they were tired, the roster was not so deep, and they started losing and dropping in the standings, which is actually what's happening right now.
Déjà vu.
The depth in their roster is questionable. And I would say that Jerian Grant and Troy Daniels are not living up to the expectations. Both guards with NBA experience, with solid NBA experience, you should say.
Yeah, at
both
least
of
Troy
them,
Daniels,
both of them are not performing or underperforming in the EuroLeague. Troy Daniels, 7 games in the EuroLeague so far, 3.9 points per game, only 8.5 minutes per game, only 30% shooting. Not good enough, I would say. Jerian Grant, almost 10 minutes per game, 11 games, 1.9 points per game, 15% shooting from the outside, 33% shooting from the 2-point range. Not good enough. If you want to win the EuroLeague, if you want to be a Final Four team, you need depth in your roster. Anadolu Efes and Real Madrid are the prime examples of this. And if it's possible, actually, to part ways with the players that are underperforming and search for better ones to fill these spots in the roster, I think now is the time to do that, before the new year. You still have time. So
I think that's coming because there were rumors about some potential backcourt signings in Milan, and especially there were talks about replacing Grant, for example. Maybe the EuroLeague level is still too high for him at the moment. They had expectations on Troy Daniels, and as you mentioned, for sure, he is not meeting these expectations yet. So to make some adjustments, they should sign some backcourt player, shooting guard specifically. And as you mentioned, for sure their roster, their depth is a problem, and especially when you have so many veterans. All these players, so many veterans, and maybe when some of these players are out, Mitoglu before it was Delaney, and they had a bigger workload, maybe that's also affecting this veteran team.
Their starting lineup is fine. Shavon Shields is great. Rodriguez and Delaney are great point guards. But if you're too dependent on them, they are veterans. And you could say about Malcolm Delaney in the past few years, he's injury prone. So you lose him for a month, and then Sergio Rodriguez is not capable at this point of his career to cover 25 minutes. And which is why I'm saying that if you could improve the team by signing some guards, it would be great. Mitoglu will be back on the court. Benjamin Bentil could cover his minutes for a while. I don't think that the power forward position is a big problem for them, actually. Gigi Datome is actually having a solid season. He's playing more like a small forward, but still.
I'm just missing, physicality and better defensive presence in the front line, because with Mitoglu in the first 10 games, they were second best. They had the second best defensive rating, for example, and now they're last. So I think it was the outcome of missing Mitoglu and some lineup changes.
How long is he out?
For 2 months, and so now it's like 5 weeks or something, and he will be reevaluated once again this month. So we'll see.
I wish him the best, but I do expect some roster changes in Milan before the new year.
What kind of roster changes would you expect in Monaco, and if they need any roster changes after making so many of them in the beginning of the season? Because they're on a losing streak. They lost 4 games, and I think that they have even bigger problems than that losing streak.
Well, first of all, some of these games, especially the one against ASVEL, it was just bad luck. Bad luck. They should have won it. Roster changes in Monaco, well, I would say once again that they just have too many players. By saying too many players, I mean too many ambitious players that actually want a big role on the team. And it is difficult to balance all of this. And if you want to change the roster, I would say they don't need to sign anyone additionally.
I think
they could release some players. They could release some players. I'm not sure which ones though. If Mike James, we remember he had this I don't know whether it was a conflict or not, but he left the court. He went straight to the locker room, and then you were thinking like the same thing is happening that happened in Moscow with Mike James and Coach Itoudis. But he got back on the court, and he had some solid performances. Actually, his last game against Fenerbahce, they lost it, but it was his best game of the season so far. So you could still say that Mike James can still be the leader of the team. But then you're thinking about the others. Dwayne Bacon, Paris Lee. How do you manage all of this? Now they're losing. I'm not saying they're losing because they have too many players, but if you want to keep everybody happy, the team should not be built in this way. I would think so. Yeah,
Mike definitely was not happy in Istanbul at Sinan Erdem. But the thing is that I can see fans and haters of Mike James saying once again that, it's Mike James and it's repeating, it's all over again, and one more conflict is emerging, and maybe he will leave Monaco during the season. But from what I've heard, there's much more than just Mike James and Zvezdan Mitrovic. And the chemistry between the coach and players is not very good, to say at least. And it seems like there's a lack of trust between players if Zvezdan Mitrovic is the right coach to run this team. But what is also very interesting that when we talk about teams like UNICS, Baskonia, since day one, we were talking that these coaches are on the hot seat, and no matter what. And the Zvezdan Mitrovic is very safe, feels very safe in Monaco, because the front office of Monaco loves him a lot because they reached amazing victories with Zvezdan under the helm of the team. So it's very unlikely that we'll see a coaching change in Monaco, and that raises the question how this team will solve all these problems, how they will solve chemistry issues. And for example, Dwayne Bacon, he had a nice impact when he came to Monaco, but he was out of the roster for almost 2 weeks, and I've heard that it was not an injury or something. There was something bigger again, and it doesn't say anything good about the chemistry inside the team at the moment. So I'm very curious to see when we have Milan. We kind of feel that when all players will be back in the lineup, and somehow Messina will figure this out.
Yeah.
In Monaco case, the problems are deeper than just some injuries, than just some stretch, because Monaco, once again, they lost to good teams like Maccabi, Efes, that disaster against ASVEL, Fenerbahce, okay, it was different case, but looking aside, it doesn't look that bad. But from what I hear, inside, there are some, let's say, connection problems inside the team, and that what worries me a lot. And now they're having a, let's say, challenging schedule. They're facing Milan this week. They have Žalgiris away, and despite the fact that Žalgiris started the season really bad, at home they're good. They're playing good, and they improved their game so far. Then they play Zenit and finish the first part of the regular season at Berlin, where we saw some teams collapsing. So that's a tough and challenging period for
Mike James
Monaco.
is out actually for like
For
10 days.
Which is
at least.
2 games.
He could miss 2 games,
Yeah.
right? As bad as it sounds, I think some injuries could benefit this team. Some players getting injured and missing games would make life easier for Zvezdan Mitrovic, and it would be beneficial
but it can't be
for
Mike
some other
James.
players. I'm not going to say any names. I'm not going to wish an injury for a player.
Yeah.
Come on. But I'm just saying that in these type of situations, it happens in sports. When you have too many players and too many decisions to make, when some players get injured and get out of the roster, it becomes easier for you and for the players. Because if somebody knows that, well, we have an injured point guard and we have an injured shooting guard, I'm going to play 25 minutes either way. And the coach knows that, well, this is the lineup for today. We have like 9 players in the rotation. And sometimes it makes life a little bit easier. I'm not saying that the solution for Monaco is to injure some players on purpose, obviously. But it's just what it is. And we were sort of talking about this previously, that it could be a problem for them signing too many players that want a big role on the team, and bringing Dwayne Bacon was kind of strange. Before the season, there were no expectations for Monaco. Actually, they were entering the EuroLeague for the first time. You saw the roster. There were some good, interesting players, but nothing special.
We had them last in our power rankings before the season.
And then, bam, they blow the market by these signings. And of course, when you sign big names, people start expecting more. I would say that for Monaco, a young organization that is in the EuroLeague for the first time, to be where they are right now is okay, is acceptable.
Yeah.
But if there are issues inside of the team, chemistry issues, well, then of course it needs to be dealt with. As far as I understand, you're not suggesting they should change Zvezdan Mitrovic. They should trust him. What do you think?
It's tough. I think that the coaching market is not very good, not suitable for a coaching change. But at the same time, I'm not inside the team where I would see if it's impossible to continue with this coach or not. Because if players already tuned out this coach, it's a problem. And it's just a matter of time when it's all blow out. And I was reading the book When the Game Was Ours. It was the story about Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. And in one of the last chapters of that book, it was very interesting thought of Larry Bird. He signed with Pacers. He was the head coach of Indiana Pacers. And when he signed, his main part of the agreement was, I'm here to coach for 3 years, because usually after 3 years, players just tune you out. They tune the coach out, and that's what we actually saw in Žalgiris, for example. Some players couldn't stand Šarūnas Jasikevičius no longer, and in some teams it just happens that you're just too tired of that kind of routine. It's a different story. It's another interesting topic to discuss about. And for example, I can also see the importance in Barcelona for Šarūnas Jasikevičius to win as fast as possible, because in 2 or 3 years, some of these star players, unless they will be replaced, they will be too tired of that kind of regime. But coming back to this topic, there was also a situation in LA when Pat Riley was doing a great job, but there was a moment when team just started to, they lost the belief in their coach, no matter how good he was. And I'm afraid that in this situation, it can be already lost, that connection, that belief, that support. And I hope not, because as I said, I don't see a good scenario in the long term for this team then. So I would suggest not to sign anybody else.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Unless you sign a true floor general, because when Leo Westermann is out, I miss a playmaker. I miss a point guard who could create for others.
But bringing another point
but you
guard
have to
would make others
cut 5 players.
really unhappy. Yeah.
And Monaco is the team. It is an organization where you can wish for a playmaker, but I wouldn't surprise to see Isaiah Thomas coming to Monaco, for example.
Oh my God,
that would be
Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I wish it won't happen. I wish they will shorten the rotation, because their idea was clear, to keep players fresh for the EuroLeague and to play some of the guys just in the French league. But what I see on the court, the lack of the lack of chemistry on the defensive end. It seems like when all these players are subbed out, subbed in all the time, when Zvezdan Mitrovic is using all these rotations, they just cannot click on the court, and especially defensively. In the last 4 games, they had a second worst defensive rating, and they're not good defensive team. On the offensive end, I just see too many contested shots. I just see too many bad looks from Paris Lee or Alpha Diallo. I can stand looking Mike James taking tough shots, but I cannot watch Paris Lee or Alpha Diallo taking difficult shots. So what I mean, they need some more discipline on the court, more understanding on the court, and that huge rotation has some drawbacks also. And now it's against them at the moment.
Well, since we're quoting legendary coaches, I could quote Phil Jackson from 2003-04 season when he said that modern day players don't want to be a part of the system. They want to be the system. So it was happening in the NBA 20 or more years ago already, and it's coming to EuroLeague a little bit. You could also see that there are teams where players have more control than the coach. We're still used to seeing EuroLeague as the coaches' league, where Jasikevičius or Itoudis decide everything. But this Monaco team, this roster, I don't think it's suitable for a coach to implement a system. You brought these players individually, they're great. You have to find a way to make them be great on the court together. And I think it's more psychological than tactical. I don't think we're talking about tactics or sets or defensive systems. I think it's just about communication and being able to approach all of your players.
Yeah, and making them happy. And because most of these players didn't sign for playing for system in Monaco. You can play for system in Barcelona, I know in Fenerbahce, in Jelko years, CSKA, for example. But you sign with not even the playoff contender in summer, Monaco. And I can see Donatas Motūnas very unhappy with this current situation. I can also see Will Thomas. I'm missing the more balanced offense in Monaco, because now it's very heavy perimeter-driven offense, and Monaco is one of the last teams in post-up situations. When you have Donatas Motiejunas and Will Thomas, great post-up players in your team, you should have a better balance on the offensive end, and I think that a lot of comes from perimeter players, who are not suitable with bigs like Motiejunas or Thomas.
Well, sometimes I wonder when a player signs for a team. Usually it's an American signing for European teams. Does he put into consideration what other players are there already on the roster in his position? For example, did Dwayne Bacon study this roster before signing for Monaco? Or was he just thinking, I'm a great player, I'm going to be a star of the show?
I will play with Mike James. He's not in my position, so I'm good.
Because Dwayne Bacon is playing almost 20 minutes per game. You can see he's contributing on the scoring department, but so far, from what I've seen, I cannot say he's been good. When you see a player that's scoring like 12 points, taking 15 shots, and ending up with 4 on the index rating, these are not good numbers. I know you can score the basketball, but it's a team game. You need to win games, not just put numbers. So, yeah. Maybe it's enough about Monaco.
Yeah, a lot of work to do for Monaco's front office. Who do you have next?
Well, I would like to mention Fenerbahce. They finally got a win. There was this critical point, actually, when they lost to Žalgiris and they went to Istanbul Derby. They were leading after 3 quarters and they just blew their lead in the 4th and they lost it in the end of the game. It was a really difficult moment. And first of all, I would say respect to Mr. Gerardini for sticking with the coach, because I think there are many clubs that in this case would have already fired Sasha Djordjevic. They lost 4 in a row. They had only 1 win from 8 games. Now they finally got a solid win against Monaco where they scored 96 points. However, I still see problems on this roster. Nando De Colo starts getting better. Maybe he was a little bit out of shape after the Olympics. I don't know. Now he started playing at his level. Jan Vesely is having a great season. But still, this team is lacking shooters and players that can spread the floor. So I think a single signing could change a lot. And my idea would be a stretch 4.
Okay.
A power forward that can stretch the floor, that could play more often with Jan Vesely at 5. I know you have Polonara, Bartel, and Booker, but this lineup is not built perfectly. Mistakes, I think, were made. Nor Danilo Bartel nor Achille Polonara are a complete stretch 4. Yes, they can hit the 3-pointer, but they are not players like, let's say, Alec Peters from Baskonia or Nicolo Meli from Milano that are pure stretch 4s that can play with their face to the basket and hit a jump shot. So a single stretch 4, I think, would solve a lot of problems for them. I cannot say a name right now on the market. What could be the player? Usually, in this point of the season, is someone from the G League or someone
Maybe Ben Bentel.
Someone that gets cut by an NBA. Ben Bentel, I'm not so sure if he actually is a stretch 4, a guy that really spreads the floor. I look at his numbers. Let's say he had a season in PAO with 36% 3-point shooting, but he was not taking that many shots. The year before, it was 32%. I would think about someone who is purely for this position. And looking at the others, Pierre Henry actually starts getting better.
Yeah, finally. He's a way different player when he's making 3-pointers.
So I don't want to see any drastic changes. First and foremost, stick with Sasha Djordjevic. Still, let's not forget they lost some heartbreakers, games in the very last seconds. The situation in the standings could be much better for them, if not for some single moments. I don't think they need to replace Pierre Henry. They need to put trust in him. They need to trust him to play with Nando De Colo and share those responsibilities. Marko Guduric also has to contribute, of course. And now you have Guduric and Dekolo who are good shooters, but all the others are either non-shooters at all or their shooting abilities are very, very limited. So I just think they need a shooter, ideally in the 4th position, and it would change everything. And they could start winning games consistently.
I would also consider changing Mariel Shayok. I think he's not contributing at the level Fenerbahce needs at the moment. He's getting better, but I think that better shooter in his position would also help. But yeah, what I also think that Sasha Djordjevic didn't deserve being booed, like he was after losing Efes game, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a wrong call by Fenerbahce fans. I also say it because we had a great interview just before my childbirth. Djordjevic is a great speaker, a great guy to have an interview with. What I was surprised a bit that he pointed out as Dekolo as his main guy, as his leader, both on and off the court, because in the beginning of the season, I was a bit surprised the way Dekolo was not so aggressive on the court, especially in the clutch moments. And Djordjevic was relying more on Peria Henry. And actually, when I asked this question, I thought that his answer will be Peria Henry is supposed to be his leader, both on and off the court. So, but yeah, he believes a lot in Dekolo, who leads by example. Even Teodosic told that Dekolo is a great leader, and he learned a lot playing with him in CSKA Moscow. And for sure, Dekolo will be better throughout the season. And as you mentioned, maybe we forgot the fact that he was really good at the Olympics, and now he needs some time to get in his usual rhythm.
And actually, I think teams will start to respect Pierre Henry's three-pointer a little bit more after what he's doing
He's
right
making
now.
like three pointers per game.
Three
right
games in a row, he's making at least 3 long-distance shots. In the last one against Monaco, he was 3 out of 3.
now. And he made some clutch shots.
41% this season so far. He is the type of point guard that other teams are risking going under the screens, sort of allowing him to take this jump shot. But he started making those and quite consistently, actually. So if he can do that throughout the season, he can be the main point guard playing with Nando Dekolo. If he can shoot the basketball
Easily.
it's great because we know that he involves his teammates. He is a really good passer. He puts his heart on defense as well. He's a fighter. So it's okay as long as he can make those shots, because the problem for Fenerbahce is they signed too many players with limited shooting abilities. And Mariel Shayok, you mentioned him, and he's one of those, obviously. So yeah, I think they will be better, but in order to make the playoffs and be competitive, I think they still need to sign a player. Like last season when they struggled and had problems, they signed Marko Guduric, and it changed everything. So they sort of need to make a similar move right now, I would say.
What Ilyasova is doing at the moment?
Ersan Ilyasova. Wow, that's a nice, actually.
That could be an answer.
That's a nice idea. Ersan Ilyasova. Maybe
34.
Maybe now he would be playing more as a 5
Yeah.
in the EuroLeague, but he spreads the floor, definitely. He is a free agent, I believe. He played for Utah
There were
Jazz.
rumors also the last season about him and Anadolu Efes, since he's former Efes player. He also played in Fenerbahce. I missed that fact, actually. 6 games in the EuroLeague with 5 minutes per game. Anyway, he could be a solution, especially he's a local player, so that would help a lot Fenerbahce in the domestic championship.
Yeah, that's an interesting name, actually. He's a great shooter. That's what they need. And from what I saw, let's say, Milwaukee Bucks a couple of years ago, he's still going strong.
And especially in the EuroLeague.
Of course, the problem is if you sign someone like this, you could question whether they need Danilo Bartel. They have Achille Polonara in that position. Vesely is playing a lot as a power forward. I would like to see him more playing as a center, but then you have Devin Booker who needs to play.
legendary Duverioglu also at the center.
Yeah, but Ahmed Duverioglu, I think he's
fine.
He's fine. He understands his position. In some games he will be needed more. In some other games he will play just a couple of minutes. It doesn't seem that it's bothering him. But others, foreign players like Danilo Bartel, they will not be happy if someone new comes into his position and takes his minutes. So,
with all the respect to Danilo Bartel, but probably when you're the GM or the head coach of Fenerbahce team, Danilo Bartel is the last person to be pleased.
well, I'm not really
your
sure why they
decisions.
signed him in the first place last year.
It was Kokoshkov's idea, probably.
He was such a great captain for Bayern, a power forward. He stretches the floor a little bit, but I wouldn't call him a shooter. He was so good in Bayern. He was in his place. I'm not really sure why Fenerbahce signed him. And in the end, when you're signing players like Bartel and adding Polonara the year after, you're still playing with Jan Vesely as a power forward. So you will not get good spacing in nowadays modern basketball with Vesely and Booker on the court, and also playing, let's say, Mariel Sheok, who is not a shooter. Today's game is all about spacing, and in order to have good spacing, you need players that can shoot the basketball. It's very simple.
To continue with our topic, we have to mention that there are some teams which are helpless. I mean, we won't talk about teams like Žalgiris, Panathinaikos, because you have to make not only a single adjustment. You would have to rebuild the roster to change a lot of things. So let's run shortly through some other teams. And not only, let's say, struggling teams need some help. Let's talk a bit about Barcelona. They are on the top of the standings together with Real Madrid. By the way, the great game is coming this week on Friday, El Clásico, Barcelona, Real Madrid. But the thing is that Barcelona is struggling with all these injuries. Nicolaitis is out for more than 1 month. Higgins is out for something like that also. I don't even remember when Abrinas is expected to come back, but it will take a lot of time.
Close because he got hurt in the beginning of the season, and it was reported that he's out for 3 or 4 months. So it's already December.
So maybe after the new year, but right now we see that they need some help. What is interesting that Chema De Lucas reported that they're nearing to agreement with Dante Exum. What do you think about this signing?
That's not what I would be expecting right now, actually. They need reinforcements, definitely, because if you compare them to Real Madrid, they're arch rivals. Real Madrid is so deep, and Barcelona is lacking depth right now. As you mentioned, Saras needs to play guys like Esedo or some others from La Masia Academy that maybe are not ready yet to contribute in EuroLeague. Dante Exum, well, he's a guard, a very athletic guard that cannot shoot. This is what I learned about him from seeing him playing in the NBA for 5 years.
Although he was great in Australian national team in the Olympics. If he's surrounded by right players, right pieces, he could be very good.
Well, he ticks some boxes like physicality, defensive abilities, athleticism. He could cover for Nicolaitis until he's still out. But actually, I was thinking that they need someone else in another position.
Which one?
I would say that Nigel Hayes is not having a particularly good season. He's playing mainly as a small forward.
And again, he's struggling with his shot.
Yeah, and
it seems like he has some bad experience with Šarūnas Jasikevičius, and he just cannot relax, because even with Saras, under Saras in Žalgiris, he was not shooting the ball really well, and when he left, he improved his numbers a lot under Martin Schiller.
And they kind of replaced 2 players with 1 when they signed Nigel Hayes, and they actually released Claver and they released Hanga.
He's 22% three-point shooter this season.
They have Alex Abrinas out. The options in the small forward position are limited. Sergi Martinez is getting some playing time. Nikola Mirotic, we saw, was playing as a small forward now in the recent games against Baskonia as well, but in the Spanish league, but it was limited. And I'm thinking that they actually could use a big body if Jasikevičius wants to continue playing with these big lineups, and they could use someone really big, strong, and physical at the third position. That in some cases you could move him to power forward, because Roland Schmitz this season is actually disappointing. In the previous year, we saw the Latvian guy as a decent backup for Mirotic. This season, he's not playing good. He's sometimes out of rotation.
Effort is there, energy is there, but he's not so efficient as he was before.
He's not hitting shots, actually. He's known as a
19% three-point shooter.
He's known as a power forward that can shoot a basketball, but he's not making his shots so far this season. And then I'm thinking, there is a player who's stuck in Oklahoma.
Tell me that name. Yeah, I was actually thinking about the same guy.
He is stuck in Oklahoma City Thunder. Gabriel Deck, he would be a perfect signing for Barca. He would be a huge reinforcement. Yes, he's a former Real Madrid player.
Who cares right now?
We saw so many moves between these two clubs. It doesn't matter right now. If Gabriel Deck becomes available, I think Barcelona should go for him. I don't know the financial situation in the club, but if you could sign, let's say, Gabriel Deck until the end of the season, it wouldn't require too many finances. Obviously, other clubs would be going for him as well. But for Barca, it would be perfect. He's a player that you don't have to ask him to do things on the court. He does them. He plays tough basketball. I think he would fit Saras' system. And
he's another post-up player.
Another post-up player, and I can definitely imagine these lineups where they go big and Gabriel Deck is a small forward. You have Mirotic as a power forward, Brandon Davis at center. They're switching on defense, and it makes perfect sense. Dante Exum, I don't know. Maybe it's a short-term solution. I don't know what he can bring to this team if we would expect him to become their player for a longer period of time. But Gabriel Deck, if you can sign him even for 3 years, it would be great. It would be perfect. I remember him in Madrid before leaving for NBA. He was amazing, actually. Other players, I believe they hated playing against Gabriel Deck because he just couldn't handle his physicality.
I've heard that he was unhappy in Madrid for some reason, and it was one of the reasons why he decided to leave Madrid during the season and to join OKC. And what is interesting about Gabriel Deck, that's where I actually was heading to asking this question about Barcelona, that he's on non-guaranteed contract with OKC, and until January 10th, OKC can terminate the contract and just to let him go. And there are rumors that probably you remember reports in summer that there was something between Barca and Gabriel Deck. And even to this day, I hear that if Gabriel Deck is returning to Europe, which is very likely, I don't see many NBA teams interested in Gabriel Deck. I can see him as very successful EuroLeague player. I don't see that happening in NBA. But there are rumors that if he's returning to Europe, there even might be some agreement between Barca and Gabriel Deck already that if you return to Europe, Barca is waiting for you and this is where you play. I also don't know the financial conditions. I can only imagine that maybe until the end of the season he would pay for less, and probably it should be something in that contract, to raise the money for the next and for the other seasons. That would make a lot of sense. And I actually don't see Gabriel Deck staying in OKC this year. He was already assigned to the G League, and even his head coach Mark Dynald told that he's a really good post player. Then that's not how we play typically, which means this is just the wrong player for our team.
Oklahoma is a team that's tanking. They're playing for nothing, and if you're not getting minutes on that roster, you need to get out of there as soon as possible.
He appeared in 6 games, averaged 2 points in 7 minutes. That just doesn't make sense for Gabriel Deck.
We know that Saras wanted Nikola Kalinic, so now searching for a player with a similar profile, you will not find anyone better than Gabriel Deck, and he might become available in the coming weeks. So that would
be a game changer, really, for Barca. Amazing adjustment.
Yeah.
You know what?
And I don't think they would need anything else.
No.
Higgins will get back. Kalaitis will get back. Even Abrinas will get back.
And they are doing good, so they have no need to make any drastic adjustments.
Yeah, they're leading still in the standings. Of course, they now facing Madrid, so one of these teams will prevail. Now they're second in the Spanish league after they lost to Baskonia, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to that loss because Barca players were just too tired after Istanbul, so they just lost it at home. But that's not a problem.
And you know another great EuroLeague player who is struggling in the NBA at the moment?
Kevin Pangos?
What do you think about scenario where Zenit would be pushing hard to bring Kevin Pangos back, especially when you see Shabazz Napier still being out with his injury, and as far as what I heard, he's not very close to coming back, which means maybe he's weeks away from returning and stuff. And especially in the game against Zvezda, we saw once again how desperately they need a real point guard, even though the fifth place they're at right now is crazy regarding the conditions they are at.
It's amazing to me that
but looking forward, they need a point guard.
Kevin Pangos, yeah, of course. He knows Xavi Pascual. He knows the environment. He wouldn't need much time to settle. You could play him straight away. But I think if there is a possibility of signing Kevin Pangos, they should face competition from Moscow. I think
because they're still on the market.
Also go for Kevin Pangos. Ideally, but it's not possible, I think, because of the finances. Kevin Pangos would be a perfect signing for Baskonia.
Okay.
He would solve the Wade Baldwin issue and everything else. They signed Lamar Peters, who is a baller, but I'm not sure if he's a EuroLeague material. He's still very young. He's learning, obviously. But they're now dependent on Jason Granger, who is a veteran, and they started playing through their bigs, through Steven Enoch. Actually, for Baskonia, I wanted to talk about them a little bit, so just a few remarks. Maybe now the Spanish league is more important than the EuroLeague. They need to be in the top 8 to qualify for the Copa del Rey. They obviously want to be in the playoffs of the ACB league. The EuroLeague, maybe they're thinking that actually it's slipping away from them and they need to focus on the Spanish league, which would make sense. But if Baskonia could have Kevin Pangos, wow, they would be a much better team. They would be a competitive team. They could actually still try to make a run for the playoffs. But just as you said, if the competition is between Zenit and CSKA, I don't think I don't think it's possible for Baskonia to sign somebody like Pangos.
But I'm afraid that the move which is needed by Baskonia is to get rid of Wade Baldwin. The way, the approach he brings to the team, I think it was bad from the day one. And especially even after the coaching change, I don't see, let's say, mental changes in that team. The picture in Kaunas was just terrible. There were some terrible possessions where you can see players arguing in game time situations on the offense, taking ridiculous shots, like waving, very bad body language.
They still only lost by 4.
And which is also...
Which kind of says something about Žalgiris more than about Baskonia.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that's a good connection, Baskonia and Wade Baldwin. And once again, I feel huge respect for Andrea Trinchieri, implementing Wade Baldwin in his team, making team happy, making the EuroLeague playoffs and being so competitive as he was before, because we can witness that Wade Baldwin, as talented as he is, he's a difficult player to deal with. And Olympiacos were struggling a lot with 2 different coaches. And then Duško was struggling a lot. Baskonia team is struggling a lot with him. So I think that they just need to terminate this player to improve their situation.
I agree, but the thing is that usually it's not so easy to get out of a contract with a player that is maybe the most expensive player on this roster. Maybe not the most,
Could
but
be
top 3.
But when you sign Wade Baldwin, I think that you have to put some safe options, to terminate the deal during the season.
The mistake was made already. I'm not sure, is there a way out of this? maybe you will have to keep Wade Baldwin, but if you could sign a point guard, still the team would function a lot better. And but when they brought Lamar Peters, I'm thinking that maybe they don't have that much money to actually sign someone very good. So, well, it is what it is. But one thing I would say about Neven Spakia, when he came back to the EuroLeague, he signed for Baskonia. He replaced Duško Ivanovic. We thought, well, again, they're going for a very strict, old-school European coach. But I'm watching their games, not only in the EuroLeague, also in the Spanish league. The timeouts are broadcasted. You see his TV interviews. He's sort of like a different person.
Yeah, he's laid back.
After his years in Atlanta, in Memphis, he's communicating with his players. He's so calm. He's just saying all these things, always talking about their confidence, saying just be calm, take your shot. It's like a different Neven Spakia. It's not the Croatian tyrant I remember from the days in Vilnius or the later days in Istanbul, in Vitoria, and other European clubs, in Maccabi. So once again, this proves, like we talked about Ergin Ataman, how he changed his approach, and Neven Spakia also seems like he's different. The NBA has influence on people, and when you spend 3 or 4 years in that environment, you learn a lot, and you try to do these things differently in Europe.
ASVEL, they lost 4 of 5, and if not that William Howard miracle, it would be 5-game losing streak. Do you think they are missing something?
No. I think they're right where they belong. I mean, they're not
Our
a playoff
colleagues
team.
ask us to, to have some more confrontation situations, to make conflicts, to find topics where we could have different opinions. But my God, in this case, I also can only agree with you. I think that it's just a matter of Chris Jones and Elio Kobo performance, because their numbers dropped significantly. For example, Chris Jones is now averaging only 11 points per game on 15% three-point shooting. Okobo 17 points per game on 38% three-point shooting and 37 two-point shooting. Before, they were like Jones 16 on 46 three-point shooting and Okobo almost 20 on 65 two-point and 53 three-point shooting. And the thing is that since they faced some really good defensive presence, the numbers dropped significantly, and that's why ASVEL lost. And it makes a lot of sense because they're just too dependent from them, and it's logical because this team was built on them.
They're not a playoff team,
and they won't continue like that all season long. So that's what you could expect.
With the start of the season that they had, of course, the expectations increase a lot, but
we knew that
you
time of the year is coming.
Expect them to be in top 8,
and they lost against good teams.
Yeah,
Zvezda, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich. They're improving, so that's a logical outcome.
Is okay, and once again, it is a club with a limited budget. It's not like they're winning games and then Tony Parker is thinking, wow, we have a shot this year to make the playoffs, so let's sign 2 expensive players in the middle of the season. It's not going to happen. Everything is okay. TG Parker is doing a great job. Elio Kobo is young. It was impossible for him to keep these numbers and these performances throughout the whole year. Now, David Lighty is kind of an important player for them. He's always injured. They signed a replacement. They signed a veteran guard, Marcus Knight, who played in Monaco last year. So they signed what they could with their financial abilities on the market. Everything is fine. I don't have any worries for ASVEL, whether they finish 12th or 14th in the end of the season. There are so many positives to take from this season, and there are still so many games left to play.
Yeah, and the 9th seed. Actually, they have same record like UNICS and Maccabi, and they're 7, 8, and 9.
So they don't need to change anything, and I don't think they will.
No. They're just not capable of. Let's finish our pod with going through some teams very shortly. Do you have some short solutions for some teams? For example, I can start with UNICS Kazan, and the main thing they have to do, avoid signings like Giannis Tima. Please, guys. And I think that they had a good lesson because they terminated. The contract was for 1 month and with an option to continue for the rest of the season. But they parted ways after 3 weeks which is a bit weird. Probably there was some reasons behind that. But anyway, just stay away from players like Giannis Tima because you need glue guys.
You have OG Mayo already, okay?
Yeah,
So just
yeah.
calm down.
You don't need any other. Do not sign Isaiah Thomas, although he's begging for a contract, of course, in the NBA. But I think that sooner than later he will be the EuroLeague player one day. But just avoid all these signings unless it's a glue guy, because you're doing really good at the moment. So just keep it that way.
I think they're just one center away from making the playoffs.
You don't like Tony Adjekiri?
I like Tony Adjekiri, but he is limited. And he's like...
I'm just asking because I love John Brown. So
Yeah, but John Brown, I could see him playing as a power forward. And
especially when UNICS plays such a big lineups,
yeah,
that would make sense.
Tony Adjekiri is okay. I don't have a problem with him. It's just that you need to have two good centers. And if they could have another center, that would be, I think, the last piece of the puzzle that could actually bring them to the playoffs. That's it. Everything else is working. Velimir Perasovic is doing a good job. They surprisingly are a good defensive team. They're leading the EuroLeague in steals. I think
the size helps them a lot.
And they're playing this like American defense, I would say, when they're going for steals a lot, jumping in the passing lanes, just...
Eric Pitino's defense.
Rick Pitino's even, man. Deflections. It's all about deflections.
I miss him, making all these box score analysis.
Yeah.
My God, he was great.
Okay, yeah, so that's it about UNICS.
All other teams?
Well, Olympiacos...
Maccabi, your Maccabi.
Olympiacos are doing good, but they could do better if Barzokas actually would throw out his rotation.
But that's the way he is. Maybe that's why they're winning games also.
Okay, they're 9-4, of course. Let's not criticize them.
They're third seed.
What you said, Maccabi. Maccabi is another team that could do with a pure point guard. A Kevin Pangos type of guy also for them would mean a lot. But since you already have a lot of players in this position, you have those combo guards you're playing with. Some players would be unhappy if you would bring another point guard. Other than that, I think they are fine. James Nunnally's numbers dropped a little bit, but maybe it's because of other teams started reading and analyzing more the way Coach Sfairopoulos is using him. They lost now 3 games in a row. I would say that they were really unlucky to lose in Madrid. They were leading. They could have won against Real, also against Alba in Germany. They could have won that. I think it's okay. Maccabi, for me, they are still a borderline playoff team. I could see them being the 8th seed, or maybe at the end they will be lacking like 1 or 2 victories. So
I remember they were kind of close of signing Thomas Walkup in summer, and you can only imagine what a kind of a game changer it would be next to Scott Wilbekin. It would be the perfect backcourt for Maccabi.
And instead they signed Keenan Evans, right?
Because Walkup went to Olympiacos.
And they also added Cameron Taylor. Yes, for me, Scotty Wilbekin, he could benefit from having a true floor general on the court.
And a lockdown defender, as Thomas Walkup is.
Thomas Walkup is an amazing defender. So
we will actually discuss some hypothetical trade scenarios next week, because between rounds 16 and 18, EuroLeague teams can change. EuroLeague players can change teams, because after that, in the end of December, if you leave the EuroLeague team, you're not able to. Okay, you can sign with another EuroLeague club, but you can only play in the domestic championship. You cannot stay in the EuroLeague. So the next week we will discuss all these crazy, illogical trade scenarios for the EuroLeague teams. I think that podcast also would be very intriguing.
And actually, we covered most of the teams. Some others I have really nothing to say about. Let's for
wait.
Example,
let's be patient.
For example, let's say Real Madrid. What could you offer to them? It's going great. Actually, players are getting back. Trey Tompkins is getting back. Anthony Randolph is getting back. So, and there are others that you could say that they don't need to change anything. They just need to trust the process. For example, Bayern Munich, they started the season having some difficulties, but when Vladimir Lucic came back, they now have 6 wins. Of course, Darren Hillard is
6
injured.
wins in 9 games, so that's
Hillard
okay.
is injured. It's a problem, but they're okay. Zvezda 5-8. Okay, they started better than they are right now, but it's not a team that is built for Final Four or anything like that. They're doing what they can do, playing to their strengths. So some of these teams, they just did a good job in the summer, and they don't need much.
Yeah, and some of these teams are just helpless at the current situation.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, those 2 green and white clubs, I don't think there is a solution for them to save this season.
Yeah, and just before the podcast, we talked how different it would be if we would have a playing scenario with 12 teams qualifying.
Yeah.
And now you have Žalgiris with 3 wins, and they would be only 2 wins away from making the, let's say, 8 finals of the playoffs.
Yeah. The problem with the current format is obvious. In the second part of the season, we will see too many meaningless games. And you would like to see every game in the EuroLeague being competitive and meaningful. So a play-in tournament, I don't know, money for a single victory, something to improve the current format, because only 8 teams from 18 making the playoffs, it's not ideal. Doesn't make sense.
It must be on the agenda of the new EuroLeague CEO.
At the very least, the 10th spot should mean something.
Mm-hmm.
Being in the top 10 should mean something. Whether it's a playing tournament between 7th through 10th or something, I don't know. But yeah, because we all want to watch the EuroLeague when the games mean something. And now I'm getting used to watching some of these games in the second part of the season when, let's say, Žalgiris will face Pau in Oaxaca. Well, what's that about?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's just another topic.
I'm just looking at the regular season last year, and yeah, for example, Panathinaikos, Zvezda, they were 9 games away from the playoff picture. Alba Berlin 15, they were 8 games away. 14 ASVEL, 7 games away from the playoffs. Maccabi, Maccabi 13 plays 6 games away from the playoffs.
And another thing, there's no relegation or promotion system, which would mean that if you're last or 17th as well, you're getting relegated. So there you have to fight for survival. No, there's no such thing. You have the A license, you're going to stay in the EuroLeague, you're safe. So yeah, these games become meaningless. In the NBA, there are many meaningless games in the regular season, but it's a different system which works on and is based on drafts.
Drafts, yeah.
You don't have drafts in Europe, and it's not possible to have it. So I hope that, well, now that people in the front office in the EuroLeague are changing, will be changing soon, they will raise these questions.
Okay, that's all, folks.
Yeah.
This time, no fan mail. Since the last episode was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, we decided not to include any of your questions because we didn't have any questions this time. But we're waiting for your thoughts and questions below our YouTube video in the comment section. And also, probably we'll have to do something with Twitter to let our fans making questions. And
we
things
could
like
try
that.
a Q&A format at some point.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Thanks for watching, and continue us watching on Basket News YouTube channel.